Third time's a charm. This is the third time I'm trying to do this video. If you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Anne. My last few videos, consequently also my first few videos on this channel since a very long time, were about my diagnosis history, how I went from being relatively able-bodied, to being quite disabled, and how I got my diagnoses and everything. So these next few videos that I'm going to do, because I am more than likely going to have to break these up into a few videos, like I had to do the last one, because this will also be quite long in explaining what my diagnoses are and my symptoms and everything, which is what these next few videos are going to be about. So, I'm just gonna kind of quickly go through what my technical diagnoses are. Some of my on-paper official diagnoses are symptoms of other diagnoses, but they are officially on paper in my medical record as kind of their own separate diagnoses. Sometimes for the purpose of we're trying to get me on disability because I am not really able to work enough to support myself. So it's a whole weird system. We've got a very weird, very complicated system here in America. So anyway, my diagnoses are schizophrenia, psychogenic seizures, dystonia, asthma, which is not related to my mental health, thank goodness. I think just those four for right now. I think. But those come with a lot of symptoms. The psychogenic seizures and the dystonia are technically symptoms of the schizophrenia, but for reporting purposes to disability, I think they technically count as their own diagnoses. I'm not really sure how all that works. So I'm going to start with talking about my physical disabilities, and then I will go into talking about my mental disabilities. So my physical disabilities, that consists of the the asthma. I won't talk very much about the asthma because I feel like most people know what asthma is. I say that questioningly because I wasn't very educated myself on what exactly asthma was, which is probably why it went for so long undiagnosed in me. So I might actually do more talking about the asthma than I originally intended. But I'm going to focus, I think, mostly on the psychogenic seizures and the dystonia, and I think I'm going to focus on those in this video, and then I will talk about my schizophrenia and possibly my asthma in the next video. I might tack asthma onto this one, actually, because I don't think I'm going to need to take like a whole video to talk about it, but the schizophrenia, definitely I will take an entire video to talk about that, potentially two, depending on how it goes. So I'm going to focus on my psychogenic seizures and dystonia for this video. So what that means when I say I have psychogenic seizures is, there are a lot of different types of seizures out there. You have, tonic-clonic seizures, which is what most people think of when they think, oh, somebody has seizures, or somebody has epileptic seizures. They think of tonic-clonic seizures. That's kind of like the classic, I have an itch on my back that won't go away. That's kind of the classic mental image, I guess, that comes to mind when people think of seizures is tonic-clonic seizures. But there's also just tonic seizures, and there's clonic seizures, and there's myoclonic seizures, and there's absence seizures, and a lot of others that I don't have memorized. There's a lot of different types of seizures. My types of seizures are not epileptic seizures, so they're not caused by electrical storms or electrical misfirings in my brain. So when I have a seizure, it won't be picked up by an EEG, I think is what it is. I get EEG and EKG mixed. I think EKG is the heart one. I'm pretty sure. I'm like 95% sure that that's the heart one. So my seizures won't get picked up on an EEG because it's not electrical current based. I think that's correct. I don't know for sure. I am not a doctor. I want to be one of these days, but I am not yet. So my seizures are atonic seizures. So what that means is atonic means that I lose muscle tone is the way it's defined when you look up atonic. I lose muscle tone. So what that means is when I have a psychogenic atonic seizure, my muscles don't work. I still have full sensation and everything. It's not like they go numb. It's not like I can't feel them. I feel them very well, and sometimes they get a little sensitive, actually a little extra sensitive. And like sometimes there's like pain that comes from that too, not necessarily, like not being able to move causes pain in that. And so when I have my seizures, when I have my episodes, I have the most trouble with my left leg. Sometimes I can walk okay on it when I'm having a seizure. Sometimes it's not so bad that I can't walk very well. Normally, walking and things that like what I'm doing with my hands, things like that, that's kind of more of an automatic thing for most people. Most people don't really have to think about, oh, I'm going to gesture with my hand this way, or I'm going to, get up from my chair and walk across the room. When I have a psychogenic seizure, I might put my hands on my armrests of my chair and get ready to, stand up, but my legs don't respond, so I stand up and I push up off my chair, but then, my legs aren't working, so I tumble forward and face plant into the floor, which is not fun. I don't recommend doing that, ever. But that's sometimes what happens to me. Or, if I'm standing up talking to somebody, sometimes my leg goes, oh, we're gonna have a seizure, and then there's no muscle there to keep me standing, so I drop to my knees, or on my face, which has happened a couple of times. I've fallen down the stairs, coming down the stairs, or fallen up, going up the stairs, fallen backwards going up the stairs, because you can't really fall up the stairs. That would be really cool. Probably painful, but really cool. But you can't really, it's not, I can't always, I can feel when it's coming on. It's what I call borderline. When I feel like it's getting ready to start up, it's really hard to describe. It's a feeling like I feel like the seizure is going to come on, but I don't actually know when it's going to come on. So I get this feeling, and like I'm on constant alert, like, oh, I feel like I'm getting ready to have a seizure. And sometimes I can have this borderline feeling for days at a time and never get a seizure. And then the borderline feeling goes away. Or I can have a borderline feeling for a minute and a half and then have like a total like shutdown of both of my legs where I can't walk at all. So it's kind of helpful, but sometimes it's really kind of not. You know, especially when it only gives me like a few seconds worth of warning of like, oh, this is gonna happen, and then it does. Or when it stretches out for long periods of time and I'm like, when is it gonna happen? And it never happens. But it is really great for me when I get that feeling. I know, like, okay, I need to take it easy. Either something... There goes my air conditioning. I'm sorry if I'm sure my mic is picking it up, because when I'm on Skype calls, people comment about it like, what's that noise in the background? So I'm sure my microphone is picking up my air conditioning right next to me. I do apologize. I have no way of controlling that. So anyway, when I do get the borderline feeling, sometimes it's really nice because I can be like, something is stressing me out, or I'm really super tired and I just need to sit down and rest and relax. And sometimes resting and relaxing for a few minutes does help a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't. So that's kind of hit and miss, but I know that something is triggering it. And my most common triggers are stress. Sometimes exercise will do it to me, like if I've had a really intense session at dance class, which I try not to have too often because I drive myself to dance class and that's not fun, having to call people to rescue me from dance class because I can't drive afterwards. So dance class, or exercise is what I meant to say. So stress, exercise. If I'm really super tired, sometimes that'll do it to me too. Like, a lot of times my symptoms are worse when I'm really super tired. So I try to be really careful and really conscious of, like, my stressors. Sometimes, though, it's subconscious things that trigger it. Like, if my subconscious is stressing about something that I don't realize in the moment that is stressing me out, it's still going on in my subconscious even though I'm not consciously thinking about it, and that can still trigger a seizure. So there's that. Dystonia, for those of you who don't know, is sustained and uncontrollable muscle contractions. And sometimes it's medication induced. For me, it's not. My schizophrenia, so my schizophrenia causes my psychogenic seizures, and it causes my dystonia. So I either get a seizure, which is a shutdown in, like, my muscles, or I get dystonia, which is an overactivation of my muscles. I don't have the dystonia all that often. Sometimes my muscles get really super tight, and I know, like, if my muscles are getting really super tight, then I know that it's more likely that I'm going to have a dystonic reaction, but I don't have a warning for my dystonia like I do with my psychogenic seizures. I just know that if I feel the muscles in my shoulders getting really tight, or like in my back getting really tight, then I know it's more likely that I'm going to go into a dystonic episode, a dystonic reaction. And the way that I manage that is I have these kind of really low dose muscle relaxers that my doctor prescribed to me that work actually really super well for me. Some people have to take, like, Benadryl shots. I don't do needles. That's a trigger for my psychosis and stuff like that, and I'll talk about that in the schizophrenia video. But there's not really a whole lot to be said about my dystonia, honestly, because I don't experience it all that often. The majority of the time, it's I'm having a psychogenic seizure. I tell you what, though, when I do get dystonia, man, that sucks ass. Like, it's really bad, because it makes my muscles sore for, like, days and days and days, because I'm having basically this cramp that won't let up, and everything hurts. But, I mean, there's not really a whole lot to be said about my dystonia. I don't I presume that my dystonia has all the same triggers that my psychogenic seizures do. I do know for sure that being cold, excuse me, being cold makes my muscles really super tight, and the times that I have had the dystonic reactions, it gets better if I warm my body up a little bit. So I'm pretty sure that cold is a trigger for my dystonia, which is not a trigger for my psychogenic seizures, but for the most part, I think those two kind of, excuse me, I think those two kind of have sort of the same triggers. But anyway, that's kind of really all that's to be said about those two. I'm going to stop the video here because this is going a little bit longer than I expected, so I do apologize for that. And I'm going to continue talking about my other symptoms and stuff in the next video. So I'll catch you guys later.